Kamoshida being the first palace ruler wasn't random. He's why you normalized the metaverse as a form of justice and conditioned you to view it as just another option instead of a last resort. Persona 5's narrative didn't just cross its fingers and hope that you'd side with the Phantom Thieves as they trigger changes of hearts. The narrative systematically engineered that reaction out of you and did it so smoothly you thought you came to that conclusion all on your own. I'm going to break down the role Kamoshida had in your opinion towards the Phantom Thieves, the metaverse, and the idea of a forced change of heart. You'll realize that your opinion wasn't a choice, it was inevitable. When Joker and Ryuji accidentally enter the metaverse and discover Kamoshida's true, unfiltered nature, their first instinct is to ask around the volleyball team to try to get evidence of ongoing abuse. Despite thorough and even harsh attempts at getting volleyball team members to spill, they get nothing. The volleyball team denies persistently. Despite obvious and harsh injuries, the volleyball team chalks it up to just intense practice. After these failed attempts, Mishima tells Joker and Ryuji that everyone, from the victim's parents to the principal, already know about the abuse and still choose to keep quiet. The narrative is taking away all your options before it even presents what the metaverse can be used for. Trying to get information out of victims that is already known among parents and faculty is not going to help. And because the narrative removes alternatives, you consider the metaverse a possible option as soon as the game presented it to you. The narrative didn't try to sell you the idea of forcing a change of heart, it just made the metaverse the only option. The next day, when Morgana meets up with Joker and Ryuji for the first time and explains to them how the metaverse can be used to make Kamoshida have a change of heart, they hold off because it seems too risky and dangerous with too many factors that can go wrong. If Joker and Ryuji had learned about the metaverse and immediately decided to go change his heart, that leap would have made you question if changing Kamoshida's heart was the correct decision. And if you questioned it for Kamoshida, you would have questioned it for future targets even harder as the palace rulers got bigger and more corrupt. But because the Phantom Thieves are hesitant and do not make rash and impulsive decisions, when they do decide to go change his heart, you trust their judgment. The next day, the Phantom Thieves are still skeptical on whether they should set out to use the metaverse to change Kamoshida's heart. But that skepticism, along with your own, would be overridden once Shiho attempts suicide by jumping off the school rooftop. This is where the abuse goes from severe to life-threatening. Shiho's suicide attempt is what officially gets the Phantom Thieves to agree that doing nothing would be worse than trying to use the metaverse to change his heart. Kamoshida's severe actions could have potentially caused someone to lose their life today, and when combining that with the fact that conventional, real-world methods are failing, the metaverse seems not simply justifiable, but necessary, not just to the Phantom Thieves, but to you as well. When Joker and Ryuji plan on going into the metaverse and changing Kamoshida's heart, An wants in, but Joker and Ryuji initially refuse to let her join them. This serves two narrative purposes. First, Joker and Ryuji are acknowledging how dangerous and risky the metaverse is, and are trying to reduce the level of risk and danger as much as possible. So if they don't have to involve another person, they won't. This reinforces your trust in the Phantom Thieves' judgment, as you see them actively trying to protect others in the process. Second, it reinforces the idea that the metaverse should be a last resort, and not just be used on anybody just because they have a palace. If Joker and Ryuji had just let An in without a second thought, you could have made the argument that they're dragging others into something dangerous, which would reduce your trust in their judgment, and as a result, you might have become less complicit in what the Phantom Thieves were doing. But because An forces herself into the metaverse and into Kamoshida's palace, and proceeds to say that she will do it again if they don't let her join them, the narrative once again leaves you with no alternatives except for compliance. Now that the narrative has conditioned you to side with the Phantom Thieves in changing Kamoshida's heart, the conditioning doesn't stop there. You already have justified built-up hatred for Kamoshida, and the game takes that hatred and amplifies it. Before An awakens to her persona, Shadow Kamoshida tells her,
But, I forget that chick's name, but it's your fault she jumped, you know.
Huh?
You were so reluctant to throw yourself onto me that I had her take your place.
This emphasizes how truly distorted and evil Kamoshida is. Not only does he not even remember Shiho's name, which shows this is normal to him, but he doesn't even have an ounce of remorse for driving a teenage girl to attempted suicide. This makes you more confident in your decision to side with the Phantom Thieves and changing his heart. Second, it validates that decision by making it maximally justifiable, because if he's doing these things once without an ounce of remorse or punishment, he will continue to do it. This makes your hatred and anger not simply justified, but necessary. Now you're more than happy to infiltrate the palace and change Kamoshida's heart, but the narrative still isn't done making you hate Kamoshida. Right now, the narrative has only given you moral permission to use the metaverse for Kamoshida, but this changes when you send the calling card and reach the boss fight. You already hate Kamoshida for all the horrible and inexcusable things he's done, and now the narrative twists the knife. Before the boss fight even starts, Shadow Kamoshida refers to her as the girl who tried to kill herself, once again showing he doesn't even think of her as someone with a name. The narrative isn't trying to persuade you anymore, it's hardening you. In the middle of the boss fight, the game reveals Cognitive Mishima, who Shadow Kamoshida refers to as a slave. Cognitive Mishima looks injured, scared, and burned out, which isn't very different from the real Mishima, and that's exactly the point. The narrative is reminding you that Kamoshida knows full well the damage that his actions cause and simply doesn't care. By keeping Cognitive Mishima looking the same as the real Mishima, the narrative is acknowledging that the abuse isn't always obvious. It's often extremely easy to overlook, which makes you think, what other abuse is out there going unnoticed? And if abuse is going unnoticed and authority protects abusers while victims are too scared or worried to speak up, conventional systems will keep failing. This is where the metaverse stops being about a single villain and becomes a tool. But the narrative isn't done conditioning you yet, as it saved the worst for last. Cognitive Shiho. When the narrative shows you the girl who's currently in the hospital for attempted suicide as a result of Kamoshida's actions in a suggestive, revealing outfit and a sweet, compliant voice, you don't just want Kamoshida's heart changed. You want to stop others from enduring the same treatment, and since the metaverse is one way to stop it from happening, you leave the possibility of using it again open. When Kamoshida's change of heart goes through and he confesses in front of the whole school, it doesn't feel like a triumphant victory. It feels like relief. Joker just barely manages to escape expulsion along with Ryuji and Mishima, and Shiho's still in the hospital recovering from her suicide attempt. The change of heart stopped the damage, but not even the metaverse could erase the damage that's already done. The Phantom Thieves aren't even sure themselves if this was really for the best. The narrative denies you a triumphant payoff because abuse ending doesn't erase the trauma and damage it caused. But your silver lining is that now you know the method works. The metaverse has proved itself a viable method to stop abuse and help victims who are suffering. When the Phantom Thieves go out to celebrate successfully changing Kamoshida's heart, they decide to continue as the Phantom Thieves. And because it went so smoothly with Kamoshida, crimes confessed without anything catastrophic like a mental shutdown happening to him, the risk has lowered and trust has increased. And because the Phantom Thieves only agree to go after targets that they decide on unanimously, you still feel that they're taking the proper precautions to minimize risk, which makes you feel more comfortable with what they're doing. This is where the metaverse goes from a one-time last resort to a viable, repeatable mechanism. Kamoshida's arc conditioned you heavily, but it wasn't any individual segment of the story that flipped a switch in your head. Every plot beat works together. Joker and Ryuji getting nothing out of the volleyball team is why, when Morgana explains how the metaverse can be used, the mental door of it being a morally justifiable possibility is already open. So when Shiho attempts suicide, you walk through that mental door alongside the Phantom Thieves. Jumping ahead to Madarame, the debate on whether or not to use the metaverse is already weaker. As soon as they find out he has a palace, they immediately go snooping in. They don't immediately make him a target, but they start exploring his palace. This is the first sign of escalation for the Phantom Thieves. When they find signs of ongoing abuse inside the palace, from abusing pupils to committing fraud, this is enough for Ryuji to have his mind set on making Madarame a target, while Morgana suggests returning to the real world to make sure these crimes are real. Hesitation to make someone a target is already loosening, but ultimately, they decide it'd be best to hold off until they get some clear evidence. This makes you gain more trust in the Phantom Thieves, and so you write off Ryuji's eagerness to act as a lone hiccup in an otherwise righteous plan. Comparing this to Kamoshida's change of heart, they didn't act until the abuse could have potentially caused someone to lose their life. For Madarame, they decided to act when a former victim of Madarame asked them to, which is still a valid reason, but the narrative significantly lowered the bar. In Kamoshida's arc, the question was, should we do this or not? In Madarame's arc, the question was, do we have enough evidence? When Madarame has his heart changed and does his public apology, the narrative makes this one feel significantly more satisfying than Kamoshida. People start talking about the Phantom Thieves, and the game gives you a narrative reward, the fan site. The fan site is not just the narrative's favorite way to make fun of Mishima, it serves a clear purpose. From this point on, popularity slowly starts becoming the metric for success, while helping others slowly turns into the justification. Persona 5 story works because you want the Phantom Thieves to continue, so the narrative conditioned you to want just that. Kamoshida was written to be irredeemable, so you would desperately want him to be stopped. Once Kamoshida's change of heart left him unharmed, the standard dropped when the Phantom Thieves started looking into Madarame. When Madarame's heart was changed, it felt much more rewarding. This is what triggered the escalation loop in your head. You stopped questioning the method and started anticipating the next target.